Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for getting involved with the project. I urge you to get involved with the project. I urge you to get involved with the summit in October. I urge you to get involved with the justice team in your community. Because it's time to stop nibbling around the edges. Time to stop waiting for the rich and powerful to drop crumbs from the table. It is well past time for a transformative conversation about community. Well past time to embrace a vision for what Dr. King called the beloved community. A beloved community that understands what true compassion is. And in Dr. King's words, that understands that true compassion is more than just flinging a coin to a beggar on the road. True compassion demands that we question the very edifice that creates such beggars. And it will not be easy to engage in this conversation. But again, as Dr. King reminded us, the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony. But speak we must. And we must speak to our friends and neighbors, speak to our school friends, speak to our church and synagogue friends, and begin to build the social movement that will ultimately result in the legislation that will move this society forward. So now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, an author who understands the relationship between compassion and justice, a thinker who understands the difference between retributive, punishing justice and restorative, transformative justice. By way of introduction, I'd like to read to you what a true champion of this social movement says about compassion and justice has to say about Maya Schenwar. Maya Schenwar is the editor-in-chief of Truth Out. She's written recently Lockdown, Locked Out, and has been writing about the prison industrial complex for Truth Out, the New York Times, The Guardian, the New Jersey Star-Ledger, and is the recipient of a Sigma Delta Chi Award for her writing on prisons. Michelle Alexander, author of The New Jim Crow, says, "This book has the power to transform hearts and minds, opening us to new ways of imagining what justice can mean for individuals, families, communities, and our nation as a whole." Maya Schenwar's personal, open-hearted sharing of her own family's story, together with many other stories and real-world experiments with transformative justice, make this book compelling, highly persuasive, and difficult to put down. I turned the last page feeling nothing less than completely inspired. I give you Maya Schenwar.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here among all these amazing civil rights leaders. This past Martin Luther King Day, I went to a rally outside the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center. It was organized by a group of young people from the Black Youth Project and other racial justice groups. And one of the members of the Black Youth Project said that she thought that if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, he would be working to end mass incarceration. This is because prison is a civil rights issue, and it's also because putting millions of human beings in cages is a form of violence. A lot of times when we talk about the prison explosion in this country, it gets boiled down to numbers. The U.S. now has less than 5% of the world's population, but 25% of its prisoners. African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of white people. But ending mass incarceration wouldn't just be a matter of reducing some of those numbers. In order to understand how to move ourselves toward real justice, we need to look at the roots of the prison system. When slavery was outlawed in 1865, it wasn't outlawed for everyone. There is a loophole in our 13th Amendment, and that amendment says that people can still be enslaved if they're convicted of a crime. So, prison actually became a very convenient way to legally keep slavery going after it was outlawed. Black people began to be incarcerated for tiny crimes, things like loitering or violating a curfew or creating a public disturbance. And then they were incarcerated. Often, the prisons that they were sent to were actually located on former plantations. So African Americans were re-enslaved and forced to do unpaid labor. This is still happening. Some of these prison farms are still in operation. At Angola Prison in Louisiana, they still have prisoners picking cotton. We can see parallels in other aspects of our justice system. For example, the precursors to some of our modern police departments were slave patrols, groups of white armed volunteers who intimidated and brutalized enslaved black people. We see that reflected today, where those roots got us. And so we start to see that prison has never only been about controlling crime. It's also about controlling people. Another example of this comes in the 20th century, after our Civil Rights Acts passed in the 1960s. In the wake of these huge victories, prisons started becoming a way that racist policies could be carried out legally. Incarceration served as a vehicle for segregation. It served as a vehicle for denying the vote to large groups of people. You can't vote in prison, and in many states you can't vote after prison. Upon release, it is legal to discriminate against former prisoners for jobs, for housing, for education. Prison policy became a way to legislate racism, to make it legally acceptable in the public eye. These practices are still very much alive today. Dr. King himself was incarcerated, of course, and in his letter from the Birmingham jail, one of the things he said was, "All life is interrelated." If we are really striving to be a welcoming community, and we truly believe that all of us are interrelated, we need to include incarcerated people in that all. And today, looking back at Dr. King's legacy, we need to acknowledge that racial injustice is still very much living and breathing in the form of our criminal legal system, and that includes both prison and policing. We also need to think about what freedom from this system would mean. This is not just a so-called public policy question. It's a question that we all need to ask ourselves because we participate in this system. We need to have a collective conversation. What would it look like to live in a country that did not cage millions of people? Thank you.